I'm delighted to be joined by Kristen Visbal, sculptor known for her beautiful and impactful public works and monuments cast in bronze. Pieces featuring marine life and the natural world, they, to me, and I'm no expert, but to me, they're so full of movement and personality and humanity. So she's most well known, I think, for her Fearless Girl sculpture. It's a 50-inch or so bronze child installed March 2017 in celebration of International Women's Day across from the Charging Bull in the New York Financial District. She's since moved for Fearless Girl. More of that to come. Suffice to say, Fearless Girl has become a symbol of female empowerment and the gender diversity in leadership, or the lack of gender diversity in leadership. And Kristen has been named, I think, probably as a result, as one of the 200 women who will make you see the world differently. She certainly did for me. So welcome, Kristen.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Tracy, and also for noting that my work tends to have a lot of motion in it. That's very important to me. I think it's boring if she doesn't move. And with Fearless Girl, that's what I added. In fact, my little model went down to Florida with her mother, and I had a 6-inch wide foam pillar that I put a little dress on, and then I rented an industrial fan to see how the skirt blew around. And I think that makes her much more dynamic.
Absolutely. I mean, when I looked at your work, it's just the mind boggles at how you get that movement in there. Not just with Fearless Girl, like the little, I noticed like a flick in her ponytail, but you've also got one that's like a girl with a dolphin, and they're like in movement. They're swimming. So absolutely extraordinary work. And we're going to talk about Fearless Girl today. But I would really love to know where your career or where it all began. I mean, how do you become a bronze sculptor of world renown? Where did you what were you like? Where were you as a child and teenager, for example?
Yeah, I had very special parents. And in 2017, I participated in the Day of the Girl Child event. It was being hosted in Paris by Plan International. And there were 12 of us that acted as mentors for the girl child that was sent by various countries. They were voted in as the ambassador of their country to participate in this event. And what I noticed is 11 out of 12 of us came from the kind of background that I had, which was very supportive parents. So I remember my father was a diplomat, my mother was a painter. She did do some sculpture, but she was always teaching drawing and painting in the basement. And my father was fluent in Spanish. His mother was from Valencia, Spain, was born in St. Louis, then grew up in New York City, speaking Spanish in the house. So foreign service made sense for him. He was stationed in Latin America, and there's 4 children, and out of four, 3 of us were born abroad. I was born in Montevideo, Uruguay, and my brothers in Bogota, Colombia, and Lima, Peru, and then my sister in Washington, D.C. So dad was very into politics. He was an economist for the Inter-American Development Bank and spent his career trying to improve the quality of life for the people that were not so fortunate in South America. A lot of the Indians, maybe from the mountains, setting up reading programs and things like that. So I, as a result, was embedded with this awareness of other cultures. Here in America, we're not flanked by other countries like you are in Europe, and there's not always an awareness. So that was dad. On the other side, I had this very strong mother who was managing all the finances in the house and teaching the painting and the drawing and doing art exhibits and selling her paintings on a regular basis. So I remember being 5 years old and sitting on my dad's lap and saying, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And he said, you can be anything you want to be. And I focused as this little girl on the word anything. And I said, anything? And he said, anything you want. I asked him 10 times, can I be anything I want? And he never put any restriction on me. So art was encouraged, art was around me. I had these strong parents in Paris. All of the other mentors came from parents who told them they could do and be anything they want to be. And that's where self confidence really begins in the household, 0 to 5 years old. With Fearless Girl, one of the goals is to set up an educational program and have her be an educational tool to impact those young kids.
Mm. So interesting, Kristen, because what I'm hearing is yes, a strong mother, a strong entrepreneurial mother, but also a father who was who advocated for others
Yeah.
and used his voice, and those are all elements that I see in you. So so it's in your DNA. But then the what was the plan when you said anything, anything, anything? How did it go from anything to being a sculptor in bronze?
Right. Well, I kind of struggled with this in high school. Where was I going to go to college? What was I going to major in? And it was obvious I loved art. I was always making paintings for my siblings for Christmas and doing little projects like that. I would take fluorescent markers and make these weird little flowers. So always creative. I think this is a very important issue when you're fast tracking someone to fearless, is to kind of lean into what you're most comfortable with, what you spend your time doing, what's enjoyable to you. So for me as a youngster, I negated all of that artistic inclination. Even though my parents were saying you can do and be anything you want to be, I thought, well, I'm not going to make a living as an artist. I can't do that. And I consciously moved away from it, went to school in Arizona. I was a marketing major. And eventually, it took 10 years before I went back to college. And this time, I was going to do a career in packaging, like uh, designing perfume bottles, that kind of an emphasis. And I was in a color class. I had to take an art class, an elective course, and I took an independent study class in clay. And the moment that I stuck my hands in the clay, I had this overwhelming sensation that I'd done it before. And I changed my major to sculpture. I wasn't at an art school. It was just a local college here, maybe an hour away. And I never used a potter's wheel. I just focused on the form, clay. And my Sculpture 101 class teacher and I became really good friends. She was a younger teacher. I was an older student, and we would sit around and drink coffee and smoke cigarettes at the time. And she took the entire class to a foundry down the road. I met the founder. And I said, well, do you ever take an apprentice on? And he said, well, what would an apprentice do? And I said, well, whatever you need me to do. And he said, call me. And I didn't call him for 2 years. So I was getting ready to graduate and I called this artist up and I said, do you remember me? And he said, yes. I said, can you use some help? And he said, yes. And so I spent 5 or 6 weeks with him working on a monument. And incidentally, my first impression of bronze sculpture was that it was so dark, and at the time I was going to wrap stone, like quartz or any other kind of marble, broken stone with steel and then light it. So I met Bill Turner, who was a wildlife sculptor, and took kind of an about face. And I did things like running around the countryside and finding little chicks. He was doing a monument of a rooster, a hen, and chicks. I worked on the grass. I scraped the floor. I cleaned. I listened and I looked. And eventually, this man was publishing a book, and he said, you can do whatever you want for 4 days. And he helped me make an understructure. So, when you make a sculpture, you're always building a skeletal structure to support it. Well, he did that for me for a mermaid, which was just a swoop. And I made that sculpture. Eventually, he said, well, let me pay you. And I didn't even know I could sculpt. And so when he came back, he was surprised. I was surprised. He said, let me pay you for your work. And I said, I don't want you to pay me. I want you to cast this little mermaid sculpture in bronze. And he did. And meanwhile, there was a mold maker working at the foundry. And I started talking to him. And he said, well, you don't want to bronze sculpture is multifaceted. You have to have a certain amount of skill at each stage. And he said, you don't want to learn one aspect of the casting process, or you'll be pigeonholed working in this one little space in the foundry. You need to go to the Johnson Atelier, which is in Mercerville, New Jersey, and home for Grounds for Sculpture, which is an amazing sculpture park with large abstract works. And he said, go up there, apply to their program, and learn the process of lost wax casting. And I went through the foundry, and they said it's a 6-month wait. And I said, okay, I left. There was a student from Belgium who could not get a visa. And 2 months later, they said, why don't you come right now? And I went and I learned and I earned apprenticeships in wax casting, mold making, not wax casting, but wax chasing, and patina. So I spent maybe 3.5 years there, and then a great big man chased me down, and I abruptly left and came back to the Eastern Shore. So that's how I got into it.
Yeah, I mean that. I mean, there's so much in there that I want to highlight, and isn't that interesting that I think so many of us, despite the fact that we have this passion or this burning inside us, feel that we can't have a future in that, I for whatever reason, and we go after, well, I've got to make a living, and then get to a certain point. I see so many talented people who can do pretty much anything, but ending up in careers where it doesn't lift their spirits or spark joy. And so when
Right.
you look back, I'm just curious to know, when you look back, you had parents who said you could be anything. You had this passion and this talent, and you didn't go down that route straight away. What was it that was stopping you from just following your passion?
So I believe that it was society's reverence for money and a certain quality of life. And I wanted that. I mean, we had a privileged upbringing, both in South America and here. I grew up in Potomac, Maryland, which is a suburb of Washington, D.C. And I couldn't see a path in my mind to actually make a living as an artist. And if I impart anything in this interview, it's that you really need to listen to who you are, because you can make a career out of literally anything. I mean, you're a coach, you love helping people, you're obviously interested in philosophy, right? So that makes you able to help someone. Art really chose me, I didn't choose it. And even though I went as and was an apprentice to study lost wax casting, I never really took a modeling class. I had a couple of drawing classes. So you have to listen to yourself, listen to who you are, trust that you'll find a path forward. And for God's sake, do something that you love. Because I remember an article that I read, I think as a teenager, that said 80% of us do not do something that we enjoy. So, I don't know why I didn't go down that path in the beginning. And I would say that it has to do with the lack of self confidence at that time. That's what I think got in the way. I was the youngest in my family. I would often pipe up and say something, and people wouldn't even hear me. They were so busy talking to each other. And the message that I got was that what I had to say wasn't important. It took until my mid 30s before I understood that it really didn't matter what somebody else thought about me. It only mattered whether I was being true to myself and doing what I believed was the right thing to do. And if I focused on that, it didn't matter what they thought. It's like being a politician. You're never going to please everyone. And understanding that is very important to fulfilling your own path. You can't be deterred by what other people think. I was I took a detour because I couldn't see the path forward to exist. And to be honest, the life of a sculptor is not a glamorous life. It's a hard life. It's a million hours spent by yourself. You can't be creative unless you're on your own. I mean, usually, sometimes you can collaborate with someone, and the money is never steady. So you need to do it because you love it. You have to select and then figure out how to make money at it, right? You can always find a way if you're creative.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like if you there are many reasons that we don't follow our passions right from the beginning, and you've pointed out self confidence, or you don't think it's possible. There are so many reasons, and I think you're absolutely right that that true confidence comes from really being fearlessly you, but that takes work, doesn't it? You have to
Right.
go on that journey. But tell me, Kristen, I mean, you mentioned the life of a sculptor is not an easy one. um, how have you dealt with inner critics or self doubt? Have you ever had imposter syndrome?
I think uh, it really is a mantra that you have to internalize, that you have to talk to yourself and convince yourself you can do something. For me, a lot of my self confidence came from a career in sales. So I used to be in the hotel industry, and I was sending leads to some 38 properties. I was in regional sales. And it's kind of how I saw America visiting these properties. So I was awarded a membership to the Hotel Sales and Marketing Association, and they said, okay, go to the meeting. Well, I walk in and there's like 500 people there, and I don't know any of them. Okay. And I thought, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this. And I learned how to stick my hand out, how to put a smile on my face, how to be friendly. And I told myself that I could do it. So once I took that initiative to say hello and I smiled, I really, it did its own work. I didn't have to do the work because people were responsive, right?
Mm. Mm. I mean, so many people that I work with, they fear networking. They fear, not knowing what to say, or being not knowing anybody in the room. So it sounds like you mastered that. So what tips might you be able to impart?
Well, so you want to be professional, right? So I'm wearing very simple clothing today, very clean lines. I would do that for success. You want people focusing on you, not on what you're wearing, even though I love fashion. And always put that smile on your face and stand up straight, like you believe in yourself, and look people directly in the eye and be friendly. You'll be amazed at how people respond to you. I would do that for starters, but you have to have that inner mantra going. It's like the Nike commercial. I love that. Just do it, right? And I just tell myself inside, you can do this. And every time you have a negative thought, replace it with a positive thought. You have to do it. That's the only way. And as an artist, there are probably hundreds of artists that are better than I am at sculpting. I've seen some amazing work. But if you cannot present yourself, then you cannot be successful at it. Bronze sculpture is a very expensive process. So, in order for me to continue to work in this medium, I have to make money. And in order to make money, I have got to be able to present myself clearly and in writing. And most artists don't do that. They can't do that. If you think about life, everything you do, you're selling yourself. When you make a new friend, you're selling yourself. When you go on a date, you're selling yourself. You're always selling yourself. And you need to be able to understand what your strengths are and build on those.
Fantastic. Such amazing tips and advice. So I want to move on to adversity and obstacles. And also, I think probably is a good a chance to point for you to for us to talk about a fearless girl, because I
Yeah.
hinted at the beginning that she used to be across from Charging Ball, but she's since moved. But so will you tell us first of all about your inspiration for Fearless Girl and how she came about?
So, this is a beautiful story. Fearless Girl, first and foremost, is empowerment. Secondly, I would say gender collaboration is the ultimate message behind Fearless Girl. So the idea of Fearless Girl was a collaborative decision. And maybe there were 5 or 6 people on the core creative team, but there was 30 people as part of this promotion. So the idea was to call attention to the glass ceiling that women face in the Wall Street community in particular in regard to equal pay and promotion. So the idea was already in place when it was presented to me. When I came on board, because I'm a woman and because I could do this and because I wanted to celebrate my fellow women, but also when I was presented with the idea, Tracy, I laughed. I thought, wow, look how we could use sculpture and realism to send a clear and concise message. And I had never done that before in my career. It was always something of aesthetic beauty, not necessarily with a specific message behind it. Well, when I entered the scene, the figure grew 15 inches. I added that wind, which I remember, I think it was an ABC reporter who said, well, that's what makes it successful. I did 7 hairstyle drawings, and we made a collaborative decision as to what kind of a hairstyle she would have. That ponytail is based on my Jessica work. So that's how she came about. And so, uh, the park is actually owned by a foundation. The foundation did not want us to place Fearless Girl in the park. So to get around that, and the idea of a girl in front of Charging Bull was McCann Advertising in New York, right? McCann Advertising New York is a big company. What they did is they went to the city and got a permit to place her on city grounds. And we just extended the point of Bowling Green Park by like 6 feet. We put a stainless steel plate down, we grouted it with cobblestone, and then we placed the figure on city ground. It was very interesting, actually. But we needed
Amazing.
a big team. Yeah. And
And,
we
and
just,
so sorry, Kristen. Just to say, so just to explain, originally she was placed
oh,
facing the
right.
charging bull statue, and that was a deliberate choice. What was the tell us a little bit about
Oh,
that?
Charging Bull, I think, is 30 or 31 years old now, and originally placed under a Christmas tree by Arturo Di Modica, who is an Italian sculptor who moved to America and is now passed. Uh, so the idea, this charging bull was placed as inspiration to the American public to convey the strength of the American public, but also the strength of the financial community there. And over all of these years, it had a negative connotation. And that was the old boys club on Wall Street, where women were being marginalized, women were being passed over for the promotion, they were being diminished, they were being underpaid. And the ad agency had wanted to do something with Charging Bull for 2 years. But their idea was to place a cow in front of the bull, which would have been horrible for women, and they couldn't sell it, right? So one of their executives said, oh, okay, you need to change out that cow for a little girl. And they went looking for a female sculptor who worked in bronze, who had sculpted children, and I had early in my career. So it was a surprise to place the figure there. We wanted her to be a surprise to the public, to appear in front of Charging Bull just the same way as Charging Bull appeared on the street overnight. And the intent was to have her there only for 7 days. But the response from the public was overwhelming. And that she went viral on social media. And she went viral because of the sense of empowerment that she gave women. But I heard from men as frequently as from women regarding their mothers and sisters and daughters. Uh, and so it was an amazing success. When I left the work after we installed her, I said to everyone, well, she's either going to be an enormous success, people are going to love her, or they're going to hate her. And they loved her. Then installed her, or we entered her into the Artervention program, which is part of the Department of Transportation in New York City. She had 11 months there. Mr. Demotica, a conservative, the Charging Bull sculptor, conservative Italian man, did not like the way that Fearless Girl changed the meaning of his work. And nobody had told him that we were going to place her there. I asked 3 times, but it was only for 7 days. We didn't intend to keep her there. So once we unveiled her, there were a lot of incidents that occurred. One of them was this artist who threatened to sue. Then there were the women who were saying, "Why did you make a little girl? Are you trying to diminutize women?" That wasn't the point. The point was to send a message about the importance of women in the business community of tomorrow. Okay. Then we had some lewd man lewdly demonstrating in front of the figure, which was very disappointing. And then another sculptor made a little pug dog peeing on Fearless Girl. So these reactions from the public are very, very important because they tell us exactly how women are perceived, how men are threatened, how women uh, perceive themselves. That's what we learn from all those responses. So after 11 months, and because the artist was not happy with the figure being there, she was relocated to the New York Stock Exchange. State Street Bank assumed the first casting, and they are financial. So they moved her to the New York Stock Exchange. I like that placement. It is sort of the scene of the crime that we made the figure to stand up against. And so she stands now across from the New York Stock Exchange.
Yes, and I went to visit her myself in February of this year, and
Oh,
I took my daughter, my 16-year-old daughter. We went a special trip down to see her, and there she is. And I have to say, seeing her in person, it's just a very moving experience. And what I love about that, about her, is her stance and her pose. Her chin is up, her hands are on her hips. To me, she looks like just full of spirit and hope and all those kind of things. So can you tell us about what you, as an artist, you wanted to evoke in the sculpture?
yeah. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you went to see her in person. That's great. The idea was to have a figure that was strong, but not belligerent and not angry, right? Just strong. And to have a child that anyone could relate to. She, I think, looks very Caucasian, but bronze darkens. And I find that a lot of Black women also really identify with Fearless Girl. The point is, it is a child that's standing up to adversity and standing up for her rights. That was the point of the work. And there's a lot of research out there that shows that women do not ask for what they're worth. So if you want to be paid equally, it begins with you. And then again, that's, there's a responsibility there. What are your skills worth? Do the research, put it in paper, put it on paper, uh, ask for the promotion, and don't be afraid to ask for what you're worth. And also, Tracy, what I found is there's another body of research that states that women promote other women. So if you're looking for a new job, then you need to be looking at who's in management. Are there any women on that board of directors? Are there any female managers? Who's interviewing you? What is the position for? Who will you be working with? Because women promote women.
Mm. And Kristen, tell me about the actual physicality of her pose and the
Uh,
significance of that.
okay, sorry. I keep pulling away from your original
No,
question.
yeah.
So the figure is based on Wonder Woman. There's a woman here, Amy Cuddy, who conducts the TED Talk seminars. she thought it was based on her pose when she presents. But it is this very universal Superman Wonder Woman pose that's in the public domain that, indicates a position of strength and determination. So if you look at Fearless Girl and Charging Bull, the odds aren't very good, are they? But she's still standing up for herself. And I remember when I used to present right after we unveiled her, I would always say, well, she's just got to be more clever because she doesn't have the brute strength. She's just got to be more clever. What the diversity studies behind Fearless Girl have found, and those started in the early 60s, was that women embody certain traits or were really good at reading and writing and speaking, and women are less litigious. Women on a board means that that corporation is less likely to be entrenched in a legal dispute, right? Men are better at capitalizing on a quick opportunity. They're better at visual spatial envisioning something in a 3D form. We need both of these qualities, qualities that men embody, qualities that women embody. What they've found is that we tend to make a perfect whole when men and women work together. And that dovetails into this idea of gender collaboration, where a man cannot achieve his peak potential unless he works with women, the opposite gender, and vice versa. So they've found that we are more productive, that men and women working together create a better environment, and that they are more profitable together. A corporation is more profitable when they fully and equally incorporate men and women into the workforce and into management.
Mm. Yeah,
And
beautiful.
it's a
Yeah,
love story.
it is, and she's and I think just going back to the actual the sculpture, is that across when I didn't see her when she was opposite the charging bull, but having seen her face, is that she just seems very positive and very can do and very much like, we're going to sort this out, and yes, I might be smaller, and yeah, you're a whatever 500,000 pound bull, but here I am, and my chest is open, and I am open hearted, and I'm open to the opportunity. And that I'm sure her stance. Do you have lots of people mimicking her stance when they? I
Uh,
know I did when they take a photograph with her.
I really loved going to Bowling Green Park, and there would be a long line of little girls that would assume that pose. And again, when I speak, I often make the group get up at the end and just assume, lift the chin, stick your chest out, stand up straight, put your fists on your hips, and then how do you feel? And essentially we would just say, yes, you can. Yes, you can do whatever you can imagine.
Yeah,
You can find a way to do it. It's not always easy.
yeah.
I myself right now face enormous adversity, enormous difficulty in my life, probably the most difficult time in my life. And to assert my rights, I'm going against the system. And it's actually exactly why we unveiled Fearless Girl,
Mm,
was to tell women again to stand up for their rights.
yeah.
So I am trying to assert my rights, and it's not easy.
No, and actually, I just on that. When I read up about Fearless Girl, I noticed that when she was moved, because of the other sculptors' request or unhappiness, I believe the mayor of New York at the time, Bill de Blasio, said the fact that she's being asked to move is the reason we need her in the first place. That women are asked to move out of the way to, because of men's requests or
Right.
discomfort. Yeah.
Exactly true. I mean, I remember I emailed Mr. Demotica and I left him a couple of messages, and I really wanted him to meet me at our sculptures and shake hands. And I think uh, he was very affronted. He was very insulted that we'd placed Fearless Girl there. And I do think that that speaks to a basic idea of women. Why was he threatened? Why could we not say, wow, look at the message we can send with these two forms?
Yeah.
And yes, it's time for women to take their equal place in the world, and that we are better as a global community for doing that. I think I understand why he wanted the figure moved, because then it was representing this ugly side of Wall Street instead of this beautiful message of strength. I understand. I just think that maybe he could have come out and entertained the two together. Maybe been positive about the idea of leaving her in place for that first year and then moving her.
Yeah.
But I have always felt that Fearless Girl can stand alone. And in some ways, she's better not in front of the bull, because then the bull becomes whatever a person can imagine, whatever an individual is going through right then in their life.
If I had to ask you what your sort of like your motto is, or your three golden rules in life are, what might you say?
Trust yourself. Trust your own instincts first and foremost. Listen to yourself. Tell yourself you can. It's all a matter, it's a psychological game that you have to play with yourself. Yes, you can. You can do anything that you believe you can do. You have to stay very focused on that. And also open the doors. If you don't try, then you'll never know. You won't get the new information. There's no opportunity for you to succeed because you haven't taken that first step. You have to try. So open the doors. Yes, you can, and believe in yourself.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Kristen. We're going to be watching. We're going to be helping if we can, and I just want to thank you so much for
Oh,
taking part in this, and also providing such an inspirational sculpture for to that lifts our spirits, and symbolizes so many things that I believe in, and that most of the people that I know believe in. So thank you so much, and we
thank
wish
you
you all the
so
best luck.
much. I appreciate you going to see her. I'm so glad that she inspires you. That's the whole point. And I hope that Fearless Girl will continue to uplift for thousands of years. That's the great thing about bronze. It lasts forever, unless you melt it down. Thank you, Tracy. It was a great opportunity. I appreciate it.